People look at you differently. You're a couple, but you're not a couple. And people tend to come up to you and say, "Is your husband getting better?" Well, no, actually, and he's not going to. He's going to get worse. And you can join things, but it is a lonely life. It is a lonely life, yeah.
What would have made my life easier, not so much now, but earlier on, I used to work with another charity that worked with youngsters, taking them boating. Not just the goody kids who had every opportunity, let's put it that way. And they could go that way, and it goes that way. Because personally, I believe that peer group pressure has much more effect on children than parental pressure, to be honest, because they can be got at any time. And I used to work with these people, but I was offered 10 consecutive Saturdays my wife looked after, and then that would have been the end of it. I didn't need 10 consecutive Saturdays. I needed, at the most, 6 Saturdays throughout the year, mainly in the summer, to go and work with these kids. Oh, I couldn't have that until I found one social worker who actually listened to me, what I needed, and she sorted it out. So my wife was able to go into a care home for those Saturdays, but not consecutive. It was as and when needed. That has been fantastic, and I am so grateful to that lady. The others, no, they know best. And in actual fact, personally, having been through it, I don't think they do know best.
So I don't really need any backup yet. My children are always available from Chester, if need be. But apart from that, what I really find most useful is my ability to go away to another address for my own respite, recuperation, and especially trying to play the piano and the guitar. I was a rock and roller way back in the 50s.
You should know exactly who's coming in to do a job, because quite often the care companies just send anybody, and it could be anybody coming in. You don't know who they are. They might show an ID card. It mightn't be made up by that firm. They mightn't even work for that firm, because they're vulnerable people they're dealing with, and you should know exactly who's coming ahead of time, not after they've walked through the front door.
Fortunately, had a very good social worker, and she was quite helpful. But then the council, or the social worker, the social services, quite happily gave you help for 6 weeks. And then, of course, that was the end of that. And this is where the third services came in. And they were extremely helpful, almost too helpful in some ways, because they came quite often, about 3 times a week, I think. And this went on for some time. And then suddenly, they told me, and they hadn't told me this to begin with, right, that's it now. You've had your fill, as it were. This was about 10 months. And they just tailed off, sort of thing, because they only did it for 12 months. And I felt that was, I could have done with perhaps less care each week, and for it not to stop, for it to go on, really. Perhaps not necessarily all the time, but when I needed it. They were very good when I had to go into hospital to get my hip repaired, and very helpful about hospital appointments and things, whilst I was getting their help. But that just went, just like that. And, you know, you're not automatically not needing anything after that. And that was very disappointing. I felt it was the wrong way to do things.
Planning to go out somewhere, you have to plan well ahead, really. You can't just go on the spur of the moment. You've got to think, can I get the wheelchair in there? Where's the nearest loo? All this sort of thing. You can't just do anything sort of off the top of your head. Think, oh, it's nice, let's go such and such a place.
You just can't do it. You really have to plan. And then you have to hope he's on a good day, on the day you've planned to go, and you have to hope that you're on a good day as well, because you get tired and you just can't. We were actually offered some respite once, and that was he could go to like a accessible bungalow, literally a mile away from the house. And I said, well, why can't he stop here? Because we're fully accessible. Why can't he stop here? And somebody just comes in to do the caring bit, so I get a bit, oh no, we can't, you can't do that. And oh, it would cost us too much, and you'd have to, the amount of care you're giving, it would cost too much for us to do it, so you'd have to pay. And I was thinking, defeats the whole object. And then somebody said once, oh, you've been on holiday. And I said, yes, a friend of ours who's also a wheelchair user lent us his bungalow. So we were in a different set of 4 walls, but we knew we could get round. I bet that was lovely. And I said, well, no, because you're still caring. You're on holiday, you don't leave your caring responsibilities behind. You're still doing it. You're just doing it in a different situation. So a lot of people can't get their heads around that.
When my mother first came up and went to live, she lived with us for 8 months. When she went into her bungalow, I was lucky in that my mother was provided with a support worker from the memory clinic. Initially to help my mother get used to the new area and to take my mother out and to get her to socialise. And initially that did happen. The care worker went to Tesco's with my mother and things like that. But as my mother's, the dementia progressed, my mother didn't want to do that. But the support worker still continued, and that was a huge support to me.
Okay, yeah, Parkinson's, he had it 25 years. But he went in with a kidney stone, and they weren't really paying attention to what I was saying about his Parkinson's, because that's what he'd gone in with. Well, he's come to have his kidney stone treated, yes, but he didn't leave his Parkinson's at home. They don't... there's a lot more education now. We've got a specialist nurse, which is great, but a lot of the staff don't seem to take into account that you may have come in with one existing condition, but that's not why you've actually come in. So it gets quite frustrating sometimes. There's no smooth transition between health services and social services and vice versa. And a lot of them are saying, well, we haven't got the money to do that, you'll have to do it. And then there's a lot of arguments going that you're stuck in the middle and they're not doing anything. Your situation's getting worse and none of them are deciding whose responsibility it is really. So I think they need to communicate a lot better. And don't be so precious as to, oh, that's our area of expertise, it's not yours. They really need to share a lot more.
When I was looking for a care home, there was only one other care home that I would have considered for my mother. There was a huge waiting list for that. But I was lucky that this particular one had a vacancy and we went for it. And she's been there for nearly 2 years, and it's a credit to the care home that she's still as well as she is. So in that way, I think my experience was probably quite positive, and up to now, my experience again is positive because the care home is good, they look after her. My mother has not hit the place really where she may have to move because her medical condition has deteriorated. That I will dread because I don't know what care home I would want my mother to then go to. There is a huge shortage of EMI care homes. She's actually in a residential, but there's no EMI residentials. Well, there are, but very few places, especially for EMI and nursing, and that is a huge concern for us and for anybody really in the area who's caring for somebody with dementia.
I know it's a big ask for somebody out of the blue to ring up and get a response, but surely there are going to be more people with dementia, there are going to be more people, carers, home carers, because of the situation, financial situations the hospitals are in and the lack of funds. There are going to be more, so they should be making it easier for people to care for somebody at home with an illness that perhaps an elderly person is looking after. We are already saving the country a lot of money by doing it. We could save them a lot more if we had extra help.